Hey everybody, welcome to A Taste of Techstars. I'm David Cohen. Thought I would just chime in and do a quick shout out. Hope everything's going well in Kansas City, New York, Australia. Where else we got this going on? All around the world right now. Pretty amazing. Minneapolis, don't want to forget about you. Detroit. Awesome just hang with you guys for a few minutes and talk to you about Techstars for a little bit. As you know, Techstars is a worldwide network and we help entrepreneurs succeed. That's our goal. Hopefully you get a little taste of it here today. And for those that don't know me, I'm one of the founders of Techstars, the co-CEO of the company. And my focus today is mostly on the venture funds, but it's still, my favorite thing to do is just work with companies, like to help teach them about fundraising and communication. Love to work on business models and pricing and all that fun stuff. So I thought I'd share maybe a few of the most common tips that I get from Techstars programs when I work with founders around the world. And I'll be coughing a little bit because I'm just getting over an ear infection. So hopefully Casey can cut it out of the video or turn the volume down at the right moment. So sorry for that. First, a few stats. I think you probably hear this elsewhere, but when it comes to fundraising, Techstars is pretty good at helping making that happen. We're now well over $3 billion that have been raised by companies that have gone through the Techstars accelerator programs. I personally have been around about $20 billion in capital raise. A little bit of a cheat because I was a first round investor in Uber, so watch them raise kind of crazy amounts of money. So that, like all things in startups, really skews the data. But thinking about just the accelerator companies, $3 billion raised, almost 1,000 companies now. So average Techstars accelerator company raising about $3 million on average now. And I've learned a few things about how those rounds work. I want to share just quickly a couple of techniques that I think you could use when you're talking to investors, but also trying to recruit employees to join the company or talking to customers. And the first skill that I like to teach a lot of is reflective listening. Now I have been to therapy in my life a few times, and I do that with my wife proactively to make sure we are talking about the things like in marriage counseling, not because we have a problem, but because we want to make sure it stays healthy. And they taught us about this idea of reflective listening. That's the idea of playing back what somebody says to you, and then asking a couple of simple questions. Did I get that right? And is there any nuance, anything else to that? And if you can do that, you can become a much better communicator. Excuse me. So when somebody says to you something like, I really want you to have 18 months of runway, when you're raising money, 18 months of time, right, before you're out of capital, I don't want to invest unless you have 18 months to work on the company. A lot of entrepreneurs will try to turn that into dollar amounts and say something like, oh, got it. So what's the minimum amount of money that you'd be comfortable with us raising? And they'd say, well, what's your burn rate? And you'd go back and forth and you'd eventually settle on, oh, okay, so for you to be comfortable, we need to raise at least $1 million because that's 18 months of runway. But if you instead use reflective listening, you would realize that all they care about is that you have 18 months of runway. And you would say something like, let me be sure I'm understanding you correctly. If I have 18 months of runway, you'd be comfortable investing, is that right? And you can later on figure out how much money it is. And in fact, you have some control over it, right? You could end up raising less money and still present a case credibly that you have 18 months of runway. So playing it back as opposed to translating it is the first key. And then just saying, is that right? Did I hear you right? Make sure that you're having a conversation where you're actually communicating effectively. And is there anything else? Is there any nuance to that I didn't pick up on? Did I get it totally right? And if you can do that as a skill, you'll find that you can really get to the bottom of issues more quickly. So that's one little takeaway that I teach a lot around Techstars. It makes people better communicators, and people that are better communicators are better fundraisers. They're better hiring managers, and they're better salespeople. And so that's maybe one thing that you can practice, some reflective listening with each other, or another day with anyone in your life. Another big tip from a lot of my fundraising experience is that the over ask is the killer. We've collected a lot of data over 10 years at Techstars, and what we found is that when you ask for too much money, you rarely close a round. You rarely are successful raising less than you ask for, even. So if you ask for 2 million and the market out there is only 1 million, a lot of people say, well, that's okay, I'll just raise the million. Our data is that that usually doesn't happen. It's a negative energy and a negative momentum. But on the other hand, if you ask for 500,000 and there's more demand than you have available, and you end up raising 1 million, that's an oversubscribed round that we all hear about and sort of know is a good thing. That creates positive momentum and positive energy. And so don't make the classic mistake in your fundraising of asking for too much. Let the market push you up. And you can make that number variable. As you get more and more interest, you could raise more and more. So that's another thing that we teach. And finally, I'll tell you another great kind of conflict resolution thing. This has nothing to do with fundraising, but more with your co-founders or internally. I call it the OF&R framework. I call it that because Jerry Colonna taught me that. It's the idea of using OF&R when you're frustrated. So O is observe, F is feel, N is need, and R is request. And if you can express what you're feeling in that way, you can say, I observe that you're very frustrated. And that makes me feel frustrated. And that I don't want to feel frustrated. I need to resolve this conflict with you. And my request is that rather than being frustrated, we actually talk about the issues. And so that's an example of an OF&R framework. And you can OF&R people. It sounds awesome, really, when you OF&R someone. But anyway, it's a great way to sort of take it out of the emotional place and make it so that you each understand where each other is coming from in any kind of conflict. That's it. I want to share a few quick tips. I can't be everywhere today. I want to give you a taste of Techstars. We obviously are psyched to have everybody here. Hope it goes awesome for you. Enjoy the rest of the day, and thanks for hanging out and listening for a few minutes.